designed to transform how investors connect with small cap companies. Today's inaugural event, the AI Edge Maximizing Value for Investors in Small Cap Companies, sets the stage for Prism Marketplace as a year round hub for networking, insights, and deal making. This immersive venue is still evolving, and we are committed to continuously enhancing the platform with new features and opportunities throughout the year. We're excited to begin with a deep dive into the transformative impact of artificial intelligence on investment strategies and innovation. Before we proceed, let me share some important housekeeping items. Once the panel has ended, we will transition to live questions. Tor will pose your questions to our panelists. Please post your questions in the chat box, and we'll be sure to address them at the end. Also, we hope you were able to grab a seat by clicking on one of the chairs in our auditorium. This immersive experience allows you to be part of the audience virtually. You can update your profile by clicking on the profile icon in the top right of your screen. Feel free to customize your avatar to personalize your presence in this virtual space. To move around the space, use the menu in the top left or your arrow keys and mouse. Simply point and click to where you'd like to go. Please be sure to visit the booths and engage with one another in chats. You can turn on your webcam and microphones to network with fellow attendees, creating a more interactive experience. We're thrilled to have you all here for this groundbreaking event. Let's dive into the world of AI and its impact on small cap investments. Tor Constantino, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AI Edge, maximizing value for investors and small cap companies. I'm your moderator today, Tor Constantino. I'm an AI columnist for Forbes.com. And joining me today is our panel of CEOs from emerging AI companies. And we're going to go through and we're going to have an excellent Q&A session involving all of our experts today. We'll go and let each of them introduce themselves, talk about their companies a little bit and what their experiences are, and then we're going to dive into each of our questions, and we're going to have a pretty robust discussion here. So we're limited on time, so we'll talk about probably for 50 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A for our live audience. But without any further ado, let's just start and jump in with Johnson. If you could go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your company, and then we'll go around and talk with the rest of our panelists, and then jump right in with our Q&A.
Yep, my name is Johnson Jane. I'm the CEO of Wellies. It's a at-home urine testing company that uses AI in color detection to kind of do urine testing at home and give you health results. Also a partner at a company called Verify.io, which is a SaaS company that does tokenization of physical items as well as identities, which is going to be very important in battling AI.
Zagros, why don't you go next?
So I'm Zagros Majsajati. I'm the CEO of iCanProveIt.ai, and what we do is we create tests on any kind of material that someone may have, and then we provide certificates that demonstrate that they have successfully completed this with knowledge. We post this up on the blockchain. I am also a full professor of economics at Winston-Salem State University, and am the former chief economist of the city and county of San Francisco.
Excellent. Last but not least.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Yuri. I'm the CEO and co-founder of AISDR. So AISDR creates and sends personalized sales messages across multiple channels. And then when somebody responds, it corresponds, answering follow-up questions, handling objections, up until the meeting is booked. So basically automating your sales process end-to-end from finding a person to contact to booking a meeting. I'm a second-time founder. Both of my companies have been backed by Y Combinator. I'm very proud to be on this panel today.
Excellent. Well, again, it's a thrill and an opportunity to be here and to be among such an esteemed group of thought leaders within the space. Coming off of last week's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and some of the exciting developments that had come out of that, was there anything that anybody may have seen or that anybody wanted to talk about that they thought was kind of groundbreaking. I've got some ideas myself, but I was just wanted to give you guys a chance to talk about anything that you thought may have kind of jumped off the page if you had a chance to see anything that was really kind of groundbreaking or exceptional out of that event.
I think, like, from my perspective, the last couple of days have been pretty optimistic and groundbreaking generally, right? Because basically what happened in the span of, like, I think 2 or 3 days is some Altman said that, like, hey, we know how to get to AGI in a sense, how we initially planned it. And then the CEO of NVIDIA said, like, hey, we have this like microcomputer that will basically make the most powerful AI available to everyone on super personal, like, at-home devices, right? And I think those two things just create this huge opportunity, right, where we will have essentially a sentient robot in every home. And it still feels sci-fi, right? But I think it's not impossible that it's actually going to happen by the end of the year. And it's shocking, honestly.
Johnson Zagros, anything else to add to that?
Well, I was at the American Economic Association meetings during that time period, so I was focused more on education and economic implications of this. And a lot of the concern deals with the disconnect between what people are saying at the CEO level and what workers are doing. And there's a huge problem of trying to get the workers on board with all of this. There's a lot of worry about their jobs are going to be at stake, and I just don't think that that's the case. I think we need to be going forward with more, as Fei-Fei Li says, human-centric AI, and I think that that's really going to be the key to adoption is overcoming that kind of that basic imbalance between what the tech leaders are seeing and what ordinary individuals see, and how do you bridge that gap? I think that will be the critical thing that we need to deal with in the next 3 to 5 years.
Interesting. So now when we're talking about the next 3 to 5 years, what are the current AI innovations for business that are most exciting to you, or that you're most excited about now? And Johnson, what do you think? Let's start with you.
I think robotics is very interesting. There's a lot of robotics that's being done, autonomous driving from, Tesla and all of these guys. It all relies on AI, right? But the problem is AI is learning from sources, and those sources might be tainted, and this is where, Zagros is telling, like, human AI or humanized AI is going to be very important, because how can a validated human validate that the source that the AI is reading is real, right? Because AI can hallucinate, and that's very important. And I think that, this is where that Terminator concept or story comes, right? Cybernet's going to come back online, and it's going to destroy the world because it's learning things that it shouldn't learn. And I think the next couple of years is going to be very critical for us humans, or the council or whatnot, to really validate and oversee what AI should learn and shouldn't learn.
Great. How about you? What do you think? What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm excited about a lot of things, honestly, right? So the most practical applications of AI that I see and use every day today are in sales, right? So I'm building an AI sales company, and we are booking like hundreds of meetings a month for our customers, fully autonomous, right? So basically AI finds a person to contact, creates a message, delivers the message, responds to message, works with objections, meeting is booked, like fully autonomous, hundreds of meetings, right? Not for everyone, but for companies that have kind of established product market fit, understand their audience, understand their messaging, the results are there, and it can be fully automated. Customer success, large part of our operations are run by AI on the customer success side, right? So we have a library. There is a lot of prep work to do, right, to make it work, right? So knowledge bases, instructions, proper prompting, a lot of homework. But then once you launch it, it works. It's fully autonomous. And something that we experimented with like yesterday, right? I posted about it on LinkedIn. So I think there is a lot of opportunity and kind of big future behind the computer use models, right? So Anthropic and Claude released this kind of computer use model in beta like a couple months ago. And basically, it can mimic absolutely everything you can do on your computer, right? So if you sit at a computer and you do like some repetitive, to some extent, task, AI can do that, right? And what we were struggling with, so we had a very specific task where you had to like upload pictures, like input credentials, like fill in the table, like one after the other. And it took us like 2 hours every time we had to onboard a new customer. We spent, I would say, 20 hours, but now this process is fully automated using this computer use technology, right? So basically it takes a picture, it uploads a picture to one system, then basically it uses credentials, copies that credentials, records them to a spreadsheet, and then just kind of reports back to me saying like, it's done, right?
Wow.
And I think with the latest models, right? So I'm very curious to see what OpenAI O3 model will be able to achieve. We will see less and less hallucinations, more and more autonomy, and the rise of this kind of computer use models, where basically every task that can be done or is done today at a computer would be fully automated, right? And then like think for yourself what that means in your company, right? Which departments are doing the most repetitive tasks, and those would be really prime for disruption with AI.
Interesting. Zagros, how about you? What technology and innovation are you most excited about for businesses going forward within the next time horizon for maybe 3 to 5 years out?
Well, I'm very interested in this merging of AI and robotics, and also merging of AI and blockchain. And what I'm worried about a little bit is the fact that not everybody is signed on to the idea of responsible AI, because we don't even have a cohesive mechanism where everybody agrees on it. We have the Montreal Protocol, Montreal Declaration, I should say, of unresponsible AI. We have other things that have occurred, but what we need to do is come together and agree on it, and that does not necessarily mean a government regulatory body that then requires everybody to come in under it, because I think that could actually stifle a lot of the innovation we have. But instead, I would hope that instead of a top-down approach, we'll have a bottom-up approach where people can sign on to an idea of a certain responsible framework that they do. You can use that to then gauge the company's commitment to ethics. And I'm concerned also about the fact that as we move forward, that we don't leave behind anyone. We don't start to make our own biases reflected in the AI, because we already have that even when we talk about something that's such as knowledge, that oftentimes it's colored by racial and gender stereotyping that kind of infects it. And we need to make sure that in all cases, that when we're deciding what we're going to be doing, to kind of go back to Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, that before we start to do something, we need to make sure that whether we should be doing it, and we should be asking ourselves that question. And I think we should be doing it, but that just means we just need to be always thinking about the ethical implications of what we do before we hit launch.
Right. Zagros, I'm going to stay with you for our next question, because you alluded to it in your initial introduction, or the initial question I asked about, and you were talking about implementation of AI. There was a recent Upwork survey that found that more than 90% of CEOs believe that AI solutions are going to boost productivity as well as save time and money. But 70% of the employees that implement those same solutions say that AI is actually hurting their productivity. How do businesses kind of close that gap? And then we're going to circle back around and hear from each of you. But Zagros, what are your thoughts, and based on your expertise and the experiences that you've had, how can we close that gap?
Well, this is a constant problem every time we've had an industrial revolution, that that what happens is that the people that are first implementing it think it's going to be all wonderful, and the people who are on the ground, well, if they don't follow along, then you don't get the same results. We saw that in the early efforts when it came to computers. Everyone talked about this huge productivity boost we were going to have. Economists looked out for the first 10 years of the so-called computer revolution. We didn't have a productivity boost. It's only later that we started seeing that boost, when people started getting the buy-in. And I think that that's going to be a mechanism by which we again have to go back to this idea of human-centered AI, that we have to start thinking about it not in terms of just talking to the shareholder, which is important. We have to always remember that we are accountable to our shareholders, but also account to the other stakeholders. Because if we don't emphasize to workers that no, we're not here to replace you. We're here to make your jobs easier. We're here to make it so that you can concentrate on the things that actually add value to the company, and thereby you can benefit. And if we can't tell that also to the customers, that they can trust this material, we are going to have a problem. So we need to really be thinking about all of the stakeholders when we are talking about this to the public, because otherwise what's going to happen is we will be going off in one direction and everybody else will be left behind. And the fact is, no CEO can do all the job. The job of a CEO is to lead their workforce and get them to do the heavy lifting. But if they're not interested in doing the heavy lifting, it's not going to be done.
Right. So important. Yuri, how about you? What do you think? Is there a way that we can close the gap based on the experience that you've seen in your company, your business?
Yeah. So I think what Zacharias is saying about is definitely true, right? But I think what is really very different when we compare like what's happening with AI and what happened in the past with computers is basically the level of productivity boosts it gives to a single person, right? So for example, one person that is really well versed in AI can do so much more than a person that is never kind of using it, right? So, and like we can talk about very simple examples, right? So a copywriter that figured out like pre-configured models to write like good copy that mimics his voice can write like 10 articles a day and proofread them, and it's going to be great, right? A copywriter who did not do that will probably write an article a day, right? Like maybe two. And the difference between the two is basically how much work did they put to figure out how to use AI for their specific work, like task and use case, and how much work they put into pre-configuring it to be actually good, right? Because if you use AI for professional purposes out of the box, it's not good enough, right? Like you have to pre-configure it to make sure that it follows specific rules, styles, procedures, etc. And there are, like, I would say, kind of 3 ways to do that. Like, first is learn, right? The learning curve is steep, not impossible, but steep, right? Like you have to understand like how to prompt, what are the limitations, how to surpass them, right? So it takes time. But can be done, and I encourage many people to do that. Like, don't be afraid. This will be a very useful skill going forward. Like the second point, the second way is to hire an expert, right? So basically you can hire a consultancy. Those are actually like emerging, who will configure the necessary workflows for you, train your team, and then kind of you will be able to productize AI applications in your company. And then the third option, which I think is going to be really growing in time, is basically buy an AI solution that is pre-configured for a specific task, right? So this is what we're doing, for example, with AI SDR. It's an AI that is pre-configured, pre-prompted with all the necessary kind of data flows connected for sales outreach via kind of multiple channels. You can do the same for AI that does customer support calls, customer support via like for companies that are using specific platforms, AI that is well pre-configured for creating marketing content. And I think this trend will be growing, right? So our first stage is going to be have AI that is very versatile and stable. And then the next step after that is going to be industry use case role specific AI that is pre-trained to perform better for a specific function.
Johnson, what are your thoughts? Do you have anything to add on to this that we haven't touched on as far as closing this from the productivity of what the expectations are with the C-suite and the actual application on the floor level or the office level?
Yeah, I think, understanding the pros, the skill sets of each employee is going to be very important, right? Because there's going to be AIs that will completely wipe out complete departments. We know that already, right? But the thing is that if a person that is, let's say, a warehouse worker, but is very creative, right? They don't understand tech as much, but they're artistic or whatnot. Well, if you place that individual inside in front of a computer and says, hey, tell this computer your visions of, this flyer or this commercial or whatnot. There's apps like, Canva is a good example, right? We don't see it as much, but Canva really is powered by AI. It's really powered by AI. I mean, my background was in graphic design. I had to go through the Photoshops, the Illustrators, and all these things, only to learn that everything I learned is, you throw that out the door because Canva can make it 10 times faster. So we've experienced employees that we hired for one thing that then now emerging now is replacing complete graphic departments because, him can do better, with the good software in front of them. So I think education is key, understanding what your employees are good at and placing them in certain departments and educating them on new things, giving them an opportunity to, like you said, train the AIs and, understand how to use those tools can really, give your task force or your workforce a boost, right? Because there's a lot of people out there, that work on certain industries and certain categories that think that their job's going to get replaced. But my thing is you should encourage them to go out there, learn about AI, and use your skill sets in a different format. Because whatever you wanted to do before that wasn't possible, it is possible today.
Interesting. When you talk about the training and right now working alongside individuals and having complete divisions being wiped out, there's going to be new AI workers that are going to be joining the workforce very soon. And those workers more and more will be AI agents. And you can't look into a tech article or tech publication and not see an article about AI agents being kind of the new thing in 2025. So, in case in point, Microsoft recently announced their integration of AI agents within their Copilot generative AI model. And with modest media pickup, I didn't see that really get a lot of coverage, but it is getting traction, the adoption of AI agents for 2025. So Johnson, sticking with you, and then we'll go back around the other way. Why are AI agents the next game changer for businesses? Why do we see that getting such kind of being this really big aha moment and coming into the forefront for 2025 predictions and being a game changer?
Well, if you look at the basics, right, what is a customer service agent or what is a sales service agent, right? They go to work, they learn from a bunch of material, and now they're doing a one-on-one customer service to a specific individual asking questions. Now, the difference between an AI agent and that specific individual is that specific individual can do one at a time, right? Maybe two at a time, maybe three at a time max. And this is where you have when you're on with Verizon or any of these companies and you're chatting with somebody and you're waiting for a response, it's because he's probably talking to another person. Now, when AI comes over, you're talking about one single person being able to address 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 at one time, right? Wow. So instead of having your customer service agents do one at a time to consumers, maybe the customer service agents are now training this master service agent to address them automatically, right? So learning consumers and adding those answers or questions into the database, revising those answers to the AI, and the AI can elaborate on them based on materials that it's learned. So I think that, by understanding use cases, sales, so we mentioned sales before. Sales is going to be a very easy part, and with ability to mask voices and all these different things, it's very hard for a consumer to distinguish whether it's real or fake, right? They just want to get the job done, right? Get the return of the product or get customer service. If the AI can do just as good, you're able to elevate your business by deploying thousands of them for a fraction of a cost.
Interesting. And AI agents don't unionize, correct? I mean, so that's another factor. My first job was in a telecommunications company, and those union contracts came up every 3 to 4 years. Strikes happened, and it was an interruption to business and a significant issue. Your thoughts as far as why AI agents are going to be a significant factor in the next year to 18 months for businesses?
Yeah. So basically what we're building, like our product is an AI agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for sales outreach. And I think like the biggest shift that people are really excited about is now you can expect software to deliver actual outcomes, right? So the previous era of software was an era of tools, right? So platforms, yes, but basically it helped people be more productive, more organized, keep things together in check, follow specific process, workflow, like maybe automate some steps, but the person was still ultimately responsible for the outcome. Now with the AI agent, what we're saying like, hey, the software is now responsible for the outcome, right? So you're not paying for a platform that you will maybe fail to implement, maybe not. Maybe the team is going to adopt it well, maybe not. You're buying a result, right? An outcome of a specific task, right? So, and we see it even in pricing evolution, right? So you're not buying subscriptions per seat, you're actually buying intercom customer support. AI is charging per successful AI resolution, right? And like, I know that the ultimate goal for our product is to charge per qualified meeting booked, and it's going to be the direction of those AI agents, and it's super successful, right? And super exciting, because you can't even ask of that from your employees, right? So if you hire a salesperson, you give them a quota, and then they don't deliver on that quota, well, you maybe put them on a performance improvement plan, maybe you let it slide once, right? Like whatever happens. And with AI, it didn't deliver, you just don't pay it, right? Like the perspective, the perspective of the future, like, is extremely exciting to companies, right? You only pay when you get results.
Got it. Zagros, how about you? What are your thoughts about AI agents and why they're the next big thing?
Well, I like the idea, obviously, of improving productivity, and I think that one of the things that we need to do, and kind of building on what my esteemed colleagues are saying in this realm, is that we need to deal with education. We need to be able to identify in our workforces all of the various skill sets they have, and a lot of companies just don't have that ability. That's one of the reasons why we brought our product online, is we want to be able to test on all of these areas, so you can find out where all of these hidden talents are. But also, I think that this liberates a lot of people. There's a reason why we have quiet quitting going on. There's a reason why we have so much dissatisfaction, why we have unions in the first place. People don't feel engaged with their work because a lot of times what they're doing is drudgery. And I think that again, what we want to do is we want to emphasize not just the obvious benefits to shareholders of this, but also the actual benefits to the workers themselves. You don't want to be having to do that same job over and over and over again with no breaks or all this repetition. You want to be able to harness your creativity, your talents, and I think that this is going to give you that game-changing opportunity in a way that we have never seen before. But I also think that this is going to be a proof challenge to groups such as the unions. I mean, look at what happened on the dock worker strike, where they were sitting there, and one of their big sticking points is we don't want automation. Well, you're going to have automation whether you like it or not. And if you go back a couple hundred years ago, more than 90% of the people were on the farm. We had 95, 96% of the people back on the farms. Today we have less than 2% are on the farms, and everybody's worried. Nobody's going to have a job. Nobody's going to be a lead. We currently have a system in which everybody in the world is better off by and large than people were 100, 150 years ago. Today, our average middle class family lives better than the extremely wealthy families of 150 years ago. And I think that all we really need to be doing in terms of this is communicating these possibilities to everyone, because again, I think it's a sales job to a certain extent, and maybe we should be asking AI how to go about doing this effectively, because I don't know if we've done the best job of communicating this to the public, especially to the workers. That's that whole division that you have, and until we start to explain to them that, hey, no, you're going to benefit in ways that you didn't even realize were possible. There's no reason why you have to have the standard 40-hour work week to do this thing. We could cut the work week down, and that will then free up a lot more human creativity. I guarantee that, if we're looking at this 50 years from now, we could easily be paying everybody the same equivalent salaries that they are now, and they're only working 20 hours a week instead of 40, for example. That is really the game-changing aspect that we need to communicate to people, that everyone can benefit from this new world economy. That's what industrial revolutions are. There is a painful period, but you need to kind of work through it, and that's why we need to get the buy-in so that these AI agents can be trained properly to deliver this outcome that we want to see at the end. And so we need to align the incentives of workers in such a way that they can see the actual real benefit of this in their own bottom line. That's what's going to really prompt people to go forward. And also, again, as I tell my students, I said to them, AI isn't going to replace your job. A person who knows AI is going to replace your job if you don't learn AI.
Interesting. Yeah. So interesting. You said a person who knows AI. Let's use that as a pivot point now and talk about some of the personalities within the space. And you'll each get a chance in each of your own opinions. Who is the most significant innovator within the AI ecosystem right now, who's having the greatest impact on the direction of the technology of business going forward, in your opinion? Zagros, let's start with you.
Well, I've kind of mentioned her before. I am actually linking more and more. I've read about Fei-Fei Li at Stanford and how she is dealing with the human-centric aspects. I think that's what's going to eventually drive us forward. I think that a lot of times we've spent too much time, for example, in ethics. I also teach a class in business and AI ethics, where we've tried to build a lot of this into the AI, but then that generates certain biases. We see a lot of issues that we need to kind of go back to the forefront and focus on the fact that what technology is designed to do is to improve the human condition. And as long as we focus on that and we do improve the human condition, I think we're going to be okay. It's when we start getting into tangents and we start thinking that, well, we can replace everything, but that's not the goal. The goal isn't to replace everybody. The goal is to replace all of that drudgery that we don't want to do. We want to liberate people to be able to do things that they wish to do and allow a new flourishing of creativity. It's not going to be the way that the so-called Terminator future if we do this thing correctly. And I think that we can see a flourishing. I mean, because again, go back and look at history throughout every time we've had a revolution, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the computer revolution. All of these things have created a lot of significant benefits for everyone. Although there were growing pains, there were some issues, but it just requires that people stop thinking that we can do the business the same way we've always done it. We have to change, and we have to be prepared to do so. And businesses that aren't ready to do that are going to likely, unfortunately, be left behind.
How about you? Who is an individual in the space who's kind of leading the way and setting the pace?
So I would say the obvious choice would be Sam Altman, right? Because OpenAI are kind of trendsetters in technology, speed of iteration. Like, they are setting the pace for the evolution of AI, in my opinion. But I think the most influential person in AI today is actually the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, right? Because he is the one backing OpenAI and kind of enabling all of that super growth. He's the one who kind of saw them and took hold of a lot of what they are doing, right? And he is the one who is really like putting AI and productizing it in all of Microsoft solutions that are already used by like hundreds of millions of people, right? So like, for me, he's the most influential person in AI today.
Johnson, who do you thinking? Yuri snuck in too there. He may have taken yours, so
Oh no, I'm
that.
I'm looking at this from a hardware standpoint, right? Like, I think obviously Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, I think that's probably one for me. That's the most influential because without the hardware, you don't really have the software side, right? You need the computing power, and I think there's a video floating around online where they use a CPU to paint something versus a GPU to paint something, right? And it was night and day. The evolution of hardware and video cards. We all thought NVIDIA video cards back in the days. We said, hey, we use that for gaming, right? So we buy these video cards for gaming, but today you can't, you're paying thousands of dollars for a card, maybe not for gaming, because you're using that to run your artificial intelligence, on site. I think Elon Musk, obviously a big name in this world, and he's got Xcyte coming out, and I believe he's been placing orders, or he wants to place orders of the new generation NVIDIA GPUs to come out, and he wants to implement hundreds of thousands of millions of these. And the way AI is going, in 2-3 years, we're going to see these video cards being the size of phones, right? Even smaller than phones, right? So for me, yeah, definitely Jensen Huang. If you look up CES from last year, I think a lot of the coverage has been around NVIDIA for the most part, because whatever you're doing in AI, whether it's robotics, automation, or data crunching, et cetera, you're still using some sort of GPU in the background stuff for some part of it. So
those are all great offerings. So circling back, let's talk about, since this is a discussion about investors and small cap developments and companies, where is the next big play and the next big development for investors? Where is the smart money going to be in 5 years within the AI space, and where are these big developments taking place? Johnson, let's start with you. What do you think? Is it data centers, electricity generation? I don't mean to step on you. I just was kind of throwing some things out there to get the discussion going.
I think a lot of stuff needs to be, a lot of analytical stuff, right? Because I believe in the past we're manually crunching, putting formulas together to do analytical stuff. But right now with AI in play, analytics can be done in a split of a seconds, right? And I experimented in the past where the past couple of weeks we were trying to build a dashboard for analytics, and I don't know any coding, at least not hard coding for programming sessions, but I'm able to prompt AI to build me analytics dashboards and run analytics and create filters. Now, imagine CEOs, not having to call for a staff meeting to understand certain metrics, right? They could just ask questions and get it in a split of a second. Now, I believe if you invest in companies that can provide heavy data analytics, right? That's whether it's from economics or politics or even sales aspects. That's going to definitely fly. Right. And again, also data sets, companies that provide data sets to these companies. And for us, with the companies that I work with, work at, we want to make sure, again, these data sets that are being provided to the world are real. right? So for us, identity protection, making sure that the person you're interacting with, that's going to be a major key point. So for the company at Verify, we're tokenizing identities, and we're basically saying that becomes your encrypted key, right? Your identity is your key, because that key will unlock all the information that you put on the web, right? And if John Doe puts out bad information, AI will be able to be influenced by bad information. So if people vote that John Doe has put out bad information, they can then say, hey, we don't trust John Doe, right? And then AI should be able to say, hey, we should ignore everything John Doe put up. But I think analytics and data.
Yuri, how about you? Where's the smart money going to be within the next 3 to 5 years for AI, the next big investment pool?
So, first of all, I think that we're still very early in kind of broad application of AI. And I think it's going to take us like 3 to 5 years for like every company to start actually kind of benefiting from the productivity gains of AI and this kind of autonomy that the agents will bring, right? And this will drive kind of costs down in the companies and will allow to kind of increase like profit margin, things like that. In terms of kind of where the next big thing is going to be, I think it's actually going to be in a huge jump in the computing itself, right? So we've heard first breakthroughs in quantum computing. I think there will be kind of a lot of potential in that space. And interestingly and somewhat counterintuitively, right? So if we look at AI applications as we know them today, right? What I think is going to happen, and you have to look at companies that do a lot of manual computer-based work, right? And what you can do, you can basically like buy out those companies and automate that work, right? Like increase the efficiency of those companies dramatically because of the computer use agents that I discussed previously. But if we look a little further, because of this, there's a very high likelihood that the value of computer work is going to go down, right? So everything that is done on a computer is going to be cheap, right? But then there are areas that are super, super difficult to do with kind of AI and even robots, right? So plumbing, for example, right? Or kind of things like that. And I think that what's going to happen, and a very kind of non-obvious upside of all this AI revolution, is going to be that the everyday tasks that seem unimportant and overlooked these days will actually become very, very important because nobody will want to do them, right? And they will increase in price. And like a company that is able to capture a way to kind of provide like a computerized human service for something that is super essential but very difficult to computerize is going to like break the paradigm and kind of win a lot of money.
Zagros, how about you? What do you think?
Well, I think that one of the key things that we need to be looking at is the human element again with respect to AI. That I think unlocking all the potential that you have in your employees. I think that unlocking the potential that we have in the school system. I think that we've kind of tried to make everybody into the same mold. And so if you look in the United States, how few we have in, for example, apprenticeship programs compared to other countries, that's going to be something that we're going to need to start thinking about. And we're going to start having to think more about people reinventing themselves over and over again. And so any product that helps people to do that, and I guess that in a sense we're tooting our horn in that sense that we want to have that ability to generate the idea that you can prove that you know something, that you have these skill sets, that you can retrain in these areas. That is going to be absolutely critical going forward, and being able to identify this material that oftentimes is very hidden, but also within companies themselves, there's a lot of material that is proprietary, and I think that what we need to do is we need to start thinking more about how do we build these AI systems in such a way that we deliver it to a company, and then they can train it on their own internal material. This material is going to stay within that company. Well, at that point, that AI system becomes extremely valuable now because nobody else has that. And that's what's going to actually drive, I think, a lot of the corporate valuations in the future, is that companies that can effectively take their proprietary information and use it to be able to create engines within themselves are going to now have the advantage, because everything that's open is given to everybody. Everybody can have it. And so that is going to be worth very little. But anything that's proprietary, anything that can't be just simply taken by the entirety of humanity, that becomes much more valuable. And so we have that fundamental tension that we need to be thinking about. And that means a lot more work being done in things like privacy. And, as Johnson talked about, this idea of identity. I mean, we're going to need to know who these people are who have these skill sets. And I think that ironically, what happens is that everybody's individualism is going to flourish at a time when we have democratized everything that can be distributed.
Interesting. If you'll allow me, I think one area, all of these concepts that we've talked about will require energy. And I think that robots, autonomized vehicles, the compute power of all the GPUs, they're all going to require electricity at a magnitude of scale that we just can't supply right now. I think that, and we look to see that the large players in the space are now trying to find ways to build electric generation plants that can either accompany some of these new data center build-outs. There are even geographies that are saying, hey, if you want to build a data center, you have to build an electric generation plant in addition to that has capacity beyond what you're going to use. So I think that investors down the road might be smart looking at some of these small modular reactors, because nuclear power is coming back to the fore again. And you can look at like Amazon and Microsoft. These are players that are looking at that solution as a possible way to provide the electricity that all of these AI solutions are ultimately going to have to lean on in one way, shape, or form. And there are a variety of players within that SMR space that may have be game-changing options within the next 3 to 5 years. Switching gears here, the AI technology is moving so fast. How ready are regulators and regulatory agencies to address the inevitable challenges? And Zagros, you talked a little bit earlier about the copyright issues that are facing and coming online here. How ready are regulators, and why aren't they ready? And we'll circle back around with everybody.
Well, they aren't.
They are
part
not.
of the problem. Part of the problem is that the expertise that you have is not existing within government; it's outside. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot of the people who are pushing for regulation have also their own agendas. And I think that one of the key things that needs to be put in place is that whatever type of regulation we come up with, it cannot be an exclusionary type of regulation where you have to apply for licenses, where you have to go and go to the government and beg for this to be tested out. Instead, what we should be looking for is more industry-based systems. Things like the underwriting laboratories, UL. Things like when you would get the Good Housekeeping seal approval, things like consumer reports. These are all market-driven systems of regulation. Credit reports. All of these things are market-driven, and that's the way that you really ensure that you have that proper balance between safety that obviously the government is always concerned about, but also innovation, which is what we are all wanting to see. And we need to really be careful about over-regulating this space, because the fact is that all of this material that we have with the internet, with computing power, it's all can be picked up from one country and moved to another in an instant, or very quickly. I mean, not quite that fast, but very quickly. And you're going to just find companies moving to the jurisdiction that provides them the most flexibility. Whereas if we can sit down and do this thing through a market mechanism of some kind, then we're going to be able to give information to people, and then the consumers will ultimately dictate how we are going to evolve. And I think that that's something that we need to be cognizant about, that we need to be working towards instead of a top-down solution. That's why I talk about going from bottom up. Bottom-up solutions almost always are preferable to pushing something down. Finally, I would say that the problem which you have is that with governments, that they're often going to be very fickle to whatever they need in order to stay in power. And again, what that means is that they're not necessarily going to be listening to everyone. They're going to be listening to the people who can buy their way into the power areas. And I think we have an opportunity here, a once in a millennium opportunity to really democratize the power aspects. And ironically, that's going to make all of us a lot of money. Not just not just a small handful, but I think all of us can become much better off. And that's something I think investors need to understand, that they're going to be putting on bets that the traditional 10% that we saw return maximum 8 to 10% in the stock market, that is not going to be the case. It's going to be much higher than that if we properly do this. So that way they don't have to worry about finding the one that's going to dominate. Right. We shouldn't be looking at that. We should be looking really at the small cap, the mid cap companies that can have the breakout success, because you just don't want one company dominating everything.
Certainly. Yuri, what are your thoughts? Are regulators ready, and why or why not?
Yeah, not ready because AI is moving very fast and regulation is historically moving really slow. And I think EU is kind of ahead of the curve. They adopted the kind of AI Regulation Act, but it's not working to their favor, right? So in the earliest stages of AI growth, they are kind of stifling it. And I think what Zagros is saying is very kind of on point. What I'm very afraid of is that when kind of regulators realize that, like, oh, AI is so huge now, like, let's shut it down. like let's make it ours. Like, this is something that I'm very afraid of, and I hope it doesn't happen. And I really kind of hope that it will be on a kind of case-by-case basis, and evolving with technology and with consumer interest protection in mind.
Interesting. Johnson, you're going to get the last word here in our prepared remarks section before we go to the open Q&A. So what are your thoughts on the regulators and whether or not they're prepared?
Well, they're definitely not prepared. I mean, we're not prepared for a lot of stuff, right? And I think there's a lot of regulatory entities, but I think the one that's going to be most impacted probably is going to be with the SEC, really. Because you think about all of the information that AI can absorb, right? All the different financial signals, all the different investment signals, in auditing of reports, etc. Now, implementing AI, how do you know that specific trader or whatnot did not cheat or did not do insider information? Because it's really hard to differentiate, right? Because today, most of the time, you're spending time on research, you're trying to understand markets, right? Where AI is now being able to process all that in a split second. So you may make a really good trade, made millions of dollars, and that was an AI basing trade on ethical information. But SEC may not see it like that. They may say, hey, how did you make this trade that was worth hundreds of millions of dollars? And what insider information did you use? But AI didn't use insider information. They just process information faster than other people. So I think that's probably one of the biggest industries, and that will be impacted with AI. And I think that SEC is going to have a big problem with that, and they better get ahead of it.
Thank you, Johnson. Now we're going to cut over to the live Q&A portion of the event. As a reminder, please enter your questions in the chat box that are on the right-hand side of the screen, and we're going to field the questions as they happen to come in. And we have one now for Yuri. take my glasses off here so I can read it. What challenges do you foresee for companies adopting AI in their sales processes, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, I think the core challenges are not new to AI. They're actually new to saying like, hey, we've done some outbound outreach. It's not working. It's never worked. We want to try AI SDR, right? And we're not going to fix that, right? So you have to first figure out the fundamentals, right? Like you have to have a process where like you have an outbound outreach or an inbound motion that works, and you want to make it better or more scalable without scaling headcount. If you don't have that, it's very likely that any AI will fail, right? Because AI is good at scaling what works, scaling the workflow of the process. It's not really good at kind of figuring out your go-to-market or product market fit. And then the other thing that I see quite often is basically companies that struggle with AI outreach and getting comfortable with the fact that it's not predictable, it's not exactly how you want it to be like written out, and they are very concerned about their like company brand, right? So, and in terms of kind of how you work with that, there are several elements, like several steps to it. The first one is you have to understand that when you're working with AI outreach, it will not be precise. It will be uniquely generated for every prospect. And you have to kind of accept it before you even start seriously considering it for your company. And then in terms of like your company reputation and making sure that it's not damaged by AI outreach, you need to pick a vendor that has done this many times and preferably has systems in place to make sure that AI is running strictly in accordance to your kind of guidance and rules around the quality of the messaging and the overall style. And second, preferably has like some kind of judge, either human or AI, checking and verifying emails, at least at the training phase, to make sure that they are on style in terms of your kind of corporate messaging and your internal kind of brand requirements. So those would be my kind of two pieces of advice.
Okay. And that question came from James. Our next question is from Alex and Johnson. This one's for you. Can you explain on how AI is enhancing product authentication and identity verification in your work with Verify?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to this. First part, the product authentication part. I mean, Verify, there's two parts. Is product authentication through NFC RFID tags minted on the blockchain and paired to the blockchain. However, there's a secondary market for the product authentication, right? So if you were buying a used Louis Vuitton bag or Chanel bag, how do you know this is real, right? Mm-hmm. Currently, all these authentication companies, I guess not the brand itself, but secondary authentication companies are using pictures and what they know from the manufacturers and images to compare stitch lines, colors, patterns, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Now, those are all done primarily by humans, right? So with AIs, it's already companies like Entropy is one of them now, where it's comparing thousands and hundreds of thousands of images at the same time and flagging imperfections or flagging color degradations to still authenticate a product based on age. So I think AIs in product authentication is going to be very, very big. The second part of it is for Verify's authentication department, which is verify.me. We are kind of battling the AI problems of fake content, right? And what is real and what's not real. Because right now you can generate hundreds, if not thousands, of articles in a matter of seconds through AI, and you can put them on the internet. And what if you go on Google, you search for information, how do you know that information is real, right? Because ChatGPT is pulling a lot of it from public databases and public sources. And if the public sources can't be vetted, how do you know it's real? Because you'll get this hallucination effect from these data companies in ChatGPT or any of these other AI companies. And what we've done is we created a tokenized identity verification platform where we want to start working with AI companies to tag their AI databases with identities, right? So, if Michelangelo is an artist and he created this artist or whatnot, or this piece of art, he wants to tag that this is authentically him, right? Or if a chef this is his recipe, right? He wants to tag it as authentically him. So, if there's bad people out there and, there's bad information out there, and if things start flagging it, we should be able to go and says, search everything that was published by John Doe and omit that from the entire database of the internet, right? So I think those are the two important things there.
Johnson, we're going to stick with you. I'm going to shuffle some things around because we know you have to catch a flight. We'll give you this question to answer, and if we run a little over and you have to run and duck out to catch a flight, Godspeed and safe travels and such. But this question comes from Bruce. How is AI revolutionizing the health diagnostics industry, and what opportunities does this present for investors? And again, that's for you, Johnson.
Yeah, this is very interesting because, if we go back, maybe 5 years or so, healthcare, doctors, et cetera, diagnostics, where does that come from? Those are all comes from information learned in the past, over the past few decades, right? So doctors are reviewing information that they've learned in school, their practices and what they've learned overall, their time there as a doctor. But AI can really help that by taking that information and doing telemedicine, right? So for example, you can use AI to, mimic a real doctor and, put a face on a digital person. And you can now provide telemedications to individual people in places that don't have access to healthcare, right? Even the projects that we work on ourselves, we're doing urine testing at home, and that urine testing at home is the same urine testing strip that you're using at a doctor or a lab. But instead of a doctor reviewing their test results, we give that power of, knowledge and, the ability to review the results at home through AI, right? So the AI would be able to interpret the color changes and tell you if you're deficient in vitamins. And that's just really one example. If from an investor standpoint, if you really wanted to invest and look into these, you wanted to look at data, healthcare data platforms mostly, because a lot of this data, you want to see how they're building this information, right? Because a lot of old healthcare information it's not categorized. So there's a lot of companies now that's really indexing a lot of this healthcare data. And if you're looking for investments, you want to invest in companies that have a very good structure of healthcare data and validated healthcare data. And then what type of AI they're using to deliver that information to the general public, right? And so I would look at like telemedications and at-home diagnostics. Those are going to take off real soon.
Right. A lot of unstructured data out there. We still have you. So this next question is for the whole panel, but we're going to hit you first with it, Johnson, and then you can exit if you'd like. How can investors best evaluate the AI capabilities and potential for companies? So we'll go to you, Johnson, and then we'll go to Zagros, and then we'll circle back to Yuri.
So I think that's a very good question, to be honest, because when you're looking at this information, you really don't know if what you're being presented as an investor is real or not, if it's written by AI or not, right? That's going to be the biggest challenge there. I think like I mentioned previously in the previous answer, I think structure is going to be a key point, right? How data is structured and how it's organized, right? That's going to be the key factor. Scalability is going to be a very big thing when it comes to AI, and structuring your data is going to be important. At the same time, I would still look into the team, right? The team is going to be the most important, right? Just because somebody built, a really good engine or a really good AI mainframe doesn't mean they can run a business, right? But a very good leader, a very good structured leader, is still able to manage a team to scale fast. So I still say when you're looking to invest in companies and reviewing AI companies, look after the team.
Sounds good. Zagros, how about you? What are your thoughts? How can investors best evaluate the AI capabilities and potential of companies?
I think one of the biggest things that investors should be looking at is to what extent are we looking at proprietary information versus things that is just generally available. Anything that's generally available that can be gathered by any AI is going to be valued. It's going to go to zero eventually in terms of the valuation. All of the valuation really is in proprietary and confidential information. And so you really want to see, is this something that anybody can easily replicate, or is this something that is very unique? I agree absolutely with Johnson that you need to look at the team, but you also need to look at the actual resources and the actual items that they have under their control, their copyrights, their patents, their trademarks, to see what they can do to effectively leverage this going forward, and also their contacts and what kinds of what do they really do? Do they know the industry that they're trying to engage in? That is critical, because we see oftentimes people trying to disrupt industries and they don't actually understand the industry that they're trying to disrupt. And that's a way to almost guarantee failure.
Yuri, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely team and proprietary data software are definitely benefits that you should look into. One more thing I would add is whether the product, right, is able to deliver measurable business outcomes, right? So the promise of AI agents is that like, hey, AI can do this task for you, like versus software that like, oh, you can click here, here, and here, and it's going to be faster, right? So you have to check whether the company is delivering on that promise, right? And you can check that on in a number of ways, right? Obviously, customer references and just like see what are the results, but also like what is the retention, like is our customer subscriptions growing or not? But the core is like measurable business outcomes, like is AI agent or AI company delivering on its promise?
Excellent. The next question is coming from Martin, and he wants to know, what regulatory challenges do you foresee for AI implementation, and how can companies prepare for them? Johnson, we see you're still with us, so why don't you take that, and we'll cycle through the panel as we did for the previous question.
I was going to say I'm just about to hop off, so thank you.
Take care. Thanks so much, Johnson, for all of your insights.
Thank you
Very
so much.
valuable stuff. Safe travels.
All right, bye.
Take care.
So,
Zagros, I know regulatory is a big passion of yours and a big concern of yours.
I think the biggest problem is going to be regulatory capture. It's going to be these large companies deciding to put up roadblocks to everybody else. We already see that in how they're trying to talk about how everything needs to be tested according to certain patterns and rules that are going to be very expensive for smaller companies. What we need to do is make sure that regulation is attuned to the needs of the market and is not something that can be gamed. We really want to make sure that we aren't closing off the opportunities to the large number of startups that are going to be out there that really can punctuate and change the equilibrium in the market and thus move us forward. I mean, that's what this whole seminar and panel discussion is about the small and mid-cap companies. And if regulation comes down too harshly on them, or if we do have a patchwork of regulation whereby everybody does things differently, we're going to have trouble. So what we really need is a consistent emphasis, not just among the various players, but more importantly, between the various countries, that they're not going to clamp down too harshly on the smaller players in the market just to benefit the larger ones.
Right. Yuri, what are your thoughts? Regulatory challenges that you foresee?
Yeah. So I think, as we discussed on this panel earlier, like the regulation is lagging behind, right? So we don't know what's actually going to happen. But I think fundamentally, if we're talking like sales and marketing, the number one thing that I can think of is labeling everything as AI generated and being kind of transparent. So we've seen kind of hints of that with the regulation for AI cold calls, where basically the regulator said like it has to have like specific written consent to be called by AI. But the moment the call is started, it has to disclose like, hello, this is AI, right? So this is something I think may become kind of more and more often, right? And we can see this regulation being introduced. It's not going to be great. Like it will kill a whole bunch of AI companies because the conversion is going to drop like to zero probably. And the best thing you can do to prepare for it is to make sure that you have like flexible contracts with AI companies that you're using for sales and marketing, to make sure that if for some reason it's become worthless, you at least can get out of the contract pretty fast.
Good stuff. We've got two economic questions here. We're going to combine them into both. We'll start with Zagros, since you are a former economist yourself, working with California Governor Gavin Newsom, as well as current Vice President Kamala Harris. First question came from Tom. What economic indicators should investors watch for when evaluating AI-focused companies? We're going to combine that with what economist perspectives and from an economist perspective, rather, how do you see AI impacting financial markets and investment strategies in the next few years? We'll just get a twofer with that, and that came from Rack.
Well, I would, first of all, there's two huge indicators that I would obviously focus on. One is gross domestic product, and the other is inflation. These are important to everything. And am I frozen or something? I want to make sure. Okay. These are very important because they're going to tell us to what extent is AI actually enhancing productivity, and to what extent is it driving down prices. And I would be really starting to worry if we started to see those not go in the right direction. I also would be concerned about unemployment as well, because we want to make sure that what AI is doing is it's enhancing everybody's ability to be able to earn a living, as opposed to some things where nobody can do it, which means, of course, you need to have retooling, because there are going to be some jobs that are just going to not be there in the future. What I would be looking for when I'm thinking about those investment strategies, I would not be trying to time the market. I would not be trying to bet everything on one. I would be looking at different AI companies within the same sphere. I'd be looking at different AI companies across different venues, trying to basically get a broader market approach, because you never know which one's going to win. And if you're trying to pick winners, it's oftentimes not the best strategy going forward. And I think that basically means that you're going to have to look at your portfolios a lot more. You can't just have a buy it and let it run forever and not look at it strategy. You have to be cognizant of what is coming up in the market, how things are changing. Don't try to pick individual companies, but do try to get on the bandwagon of any potential changes that are happening, and try to buy several companies, hoping that one or two of them will eventually become the winners.
Good. Excellent advice. Yuri, we'll ask you this question, and then we'll go to Zagros as well. This came from Bill. How can small cap companies leverage AI to compete with larger corporations? And we'll combine that with another question from Paul. It was, what advice would you give to companies looking to integrate AI into their operations without extending their resources? Seems like two different ways to ask the same question.
Those are great questions. So thank you. Basically, the way I see it is the promise of AI is to basically enable more people to use kind of best practices that are currently available only to the largest companies because of their capital and resources, right? And essentially what you can do with AI, we're trying to do at AI SDR, for example, we're trying to learn best go-to-market practices that enterprise companies are employing, right? So looking for signals, access to best databases, highly personalized outreach, and then create an AI agent who can do that fully automatically and therefore at a fraction of the cost, right? And basically the biggest opportunity for the small cap companies, in my view, is to basically try to figure out okay, what are the companies, first, what are the areas where we are most under-resourced and could grow really faster if we invested a little more into those areas, and then look for AI agents that are currently being built and launched that are focused on taking best market practices for solving that problem, that aspect, right? And that could be sales, accounting, customer support, and then implementing them into that kind of highest growth potential area that is underinvested in their company, right? And then in terms of how to invest without kind of overextending the resources, so most AI agent companies are actually pretty well supported, right? So there are a bunch that require a steep learning curve, and you would have to extend a lot of resources to do this. But most of them try to get you to a value as fast as possible, right? So I think when screening a vendor for a problem that I described earlier, you should be asking basically, hey, will you help me implement this? How much time will you require from me? And when will this be live, right? And then just kind of pick vendors that give you very hands-on support with as little investment from your team as possible and a short time to value. And then remember what we discussed before, make sure the contract is flexible, because you don't know what's going to happen next, right? And whether they will deliver on this promise and kind of all those other aspects. So those would be the things I would be looking into.
Zagros, how about you? Any suggestions on that front of integrating to compete with the large players and ways to integrate AI without overextending?
Well, I think we want to separate this into two different types of projects that you're doing. Number one are those things that really are common to all companies. I mean, payroll, sales, marketing, that these types of things can be outsourced. These types of things can be used with AI without too much problem. Where you're starting to talk about things that are proprietary, that things are unique to you, you've got to be a lot more careful when dealing with this. You've got to go with a confidential AI solution. You have to make sure that your material is not going to be usurped by the larger company, because you're oftentimes going to be partnering with a larger company in the process. And so you need to make sure that your contracts are very clear, that that your data, your information is yours. It's not to be used. It's not to be shared. Right. And you've got to be vigilant about that, because I think that honestly, all of the growth potential, the best practices are in small and mid-cap companies. That's where you're going to get growth. Once you become large, you become the market. And once you become the market, you aren't going to grow faster than the market. So it's only in the small and mid-caps that you can see that rapid growth occur. And what you need to do is you need to understand that there's a portion that you share with the world and a portion that you keep to yourself. And that portion that you keep to yourself is where all the value is in your company. And the portion that you share with the world, well, that's the one you want to drive down the cost to zero on. And so you need to split those two out and be very pragmatic and careful about your strategy. You can't just go in with an ad hoc strategy. You have to think about this deliberatively, and this should be part of your strategic plan.
Before I ask our final question, I'd like to give our audience one last chance to answer their questions. They can again, enter those into the chat box in the right-hand side of the screen. And while they're doing that, I'll ask our panel to answer this last question. Can you share some success stories of AI-driven sales strategies that have benefited from that have benefited small businesses? And that comes from Bala and from the audience that you may come to mind. Yuri, if you could lead us off with that.
Yeah. So I actually mostly work with kind of smaller companies, and we have like a bunch of good kind of case studies. One of my most favorite ones, two, right? So my most favorite one is basically we had a customer who had a good outbound process, right? In the past, they came to us to scale it. And basically in their first month, they received like a 3x on their ROI, right? So basically the customer subscribed who paid them in that month 3 times the amount they paid for AI SDR, right? So that doesn't kind of take into account the entire like annual recurring revenue tail. And then kind of that ROI just kept growing with us. And then the second use case that is kind of my probably favorite one is there was a small business who reached out to us specifically because they wanted to like book more meetings ahead of the event they were coming to. We onboarded them, and basically in 3 days we booked them 20 meetings at a conference they were going to, fully kind of autonomously, right? So it works, right? The secret is that it doesn't work for everyone, and you have to basically come with a strong understanding of like, who is it we're gonna like sell to, what is it that we're gonna be selling, what they want to hear, and then AI can like scale this outreach in a personalized, relevant way and kind of deliver results. And probably another example from a non-sales kind of industry is our own company. So obviously we have like a lot of different customer success processes, customer onboarding, and we had a process that basically used to take a couple hours internally to basically like configure customers' accounts. And then we used the latest technology like in AI to basically do automated research for customers' company, then kind of package it into our kind of company's proprietary software. And we replaced 10 hours of work with like 15 minutes of AI-driven research and kind of a bunch of API calls, right? So it works.
Great examples. So, Zagros, do you have any examples, success stories to share of AI-driven sales strategies?
Well, I think that one of the things that really has helped with AI aspect is helping you edit copy, helping you also create commercials with narrators, professional sounding narrators. These are things that are out of the ability of a lot of small businesses to be able to do, because you just can't be expert in everything. And so
Right.
just having agents that can come in and clean things up helps a lot. Also, I think for customer service, there's a lot of things that are routine that occur. And let's face it, the most important thing that you should do is to try to hold on to customers after you've acquired them. And so if you can't do that, you're going to be in this constant rat race of trying to acquire new ones, and it just doesn't work. And so these are three areas that I think that small businesses should be latching on almost immediately: is looking at your print ads, your video or radio ads, and also customer service aspects to really be able to reduce the costs of customer acquisition and customer retention.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, since there are no more questions in the queue, I'll take this opportunity to thank our audience for providing such dynamic questions and such great interaction. I'd like to thank our panel of experts for their expert opinions throughout this panel discussion, and Prism Marketplace for making this event possible. That concludes our panel presentation. You may disconnect. Thank you.